Gerry Gammond here in the kitchen today at our farm, Gammondale Farm, located on McCluskey Drive in Slate River, Ontario.
And then, so now, and you're from Slate River originally.
Yeah, I actually spent the first 12 years of my life on a dairy farm in Slate River, and then Dad sold the dairy farm. We lived in a farmhouse for a while, and then he went on to work for Canada. But I myself, after that, spent my summers working on farms in the Slate River Valley.
So then, would you say you're a generational farmer?
I would say that I grew up with lots of exposure added to the farm, but as far as the succession or the farming went in my future, my dad had sold his farm when we moved when I was 12, and then my grandfather they were farming together. My grandfather had a much larger dairy farm on McCluskey Drive at the time, and a sawmill, and Dad worked with him for a year. And then he went working away from the farm. I carried on at school, and of course then went away to Ontario Agricultural College from that point of view. And at that time, when I was away at school, my grandfather sold the home dairy farm. And so from that point on, there was no farm or land in the family.
Okay. So then you went to university. And what did you take?
So I went down to University of Guelph, and I took and was enrolled in the degree in the agricultural program, crop science major. I initially I was thinking in the back of my mind, at the time you had to take 2 years of ag, pre-vet they call it, degree program, and then go on into veterinary medicine. I was thinking of that in the back of my mind. When I got down there and there was a lot of competition to get into that course, decided I'd stick with the ag degree program. So I went and got my 4-year degree majoring in crop science.
So then what year did you guys buy this farm?
So the way it went, when I graduated from Guelph in 1969, then I accepted a job in Southern Ontario as Ontario Field Research Specialist with FMC Canada. And I was doing research all over Southern Ontario, everything from apples in Georgian Bay to grapes in the Niagara Peninsula, apples in Brighton, soybeans, you name it. I did that for 4 years. And then I was approached by a fellow I knew in the government. The new Ministry of the Environment was forming, and they were paying a lot of money for people with my experience with proper handling for pesticide. There was a new pesticide act. And I got hired at that time. And that was in 1973. I worked out of Toronto for 6 months. The job came up that I was doing down there in Thunder Bay. And so I took it, and soon I moved back to Thunder Bay in 1973, purchased a piece of rural property just inside the city limits. And we settled in there. And it was the year after we settled that soon I started farming in a partnership.
So you were partnered on a strawberry and fruit operation at the time.
Yeah. What it was is that when I came back in 1973, I got a hold of, because we had moved back with Sue with her horse, the horse connection, and we needed hay in our little barn that was on the property for the horse for the winter. And so I approached an old school chum, Don Blues, that we'd gone to school together, and if I could buy hay. And while we were hauling the hay, I said, by the way, I'm interested, I want to start a pick-your-own strawberry patch, because they had been started and were going strong in the 70s in Southern Ontario. I said, the area needs a pick-your-own strawberry patch. So I said, can I borrow your tractor and plow? Because I had 11 acres that I purchased, and I'm going to work up a couple acres and plant some berries. He said, yeah, you can borrow the tractor and plow. And so I did. And when I was taking it back, he says, you're in pretty heavy soil over there. I said, yeah, but it'll grow berries. He says, I've been thinking I want to diversify our farm. Which he was into 80 acres of potatoes and a beef operation on the side.
Oh, yeah.
And so I says, well, says, I got better land, why don't we do it here? So we formed a partnership and started growing strawberries in 1974, 50 years ago this year.
Wow. Wow. So then that leads me into, because that's what you continued on when you came here. Mm-hmm. So what drew you to that main commodity? Was it the market idea, or did you have an interest that drew you into growing fruit product?
It was a market idea because it had taken off in southern. Pick your own was getting popular in southern Ontario, right. And one of the good crops was strawberries. And I'd worked on strawberries in southern Ontario doing crop protection products. Okay. So when we came back, I figured all we had to do was figure out how to grow them, and the market would be there, and it was. Right. We started in 1974, and within 3 years, we had lineups half a kilometer long. Yeah. People wanted to come in and pick berries. So that operation grew in 1974. Don and I would start with 3.5 acres. And it grew to, by the time in 1983, when we split the operations off, up to 30 acres at that location. Oh wow! That we were producing. Not all producing berries, about 25 acres producing in that time frame. And in the meantime, Sue and I had already severed the property on the highway, made some money on that, and bought the farm where we are now, a 200-acre farm. Okay. And the idea was we were going to run 2 berry operations and incorporate our farm into the overall business structure that was there. Right. Never happened. Yeah. Because we couldn't come to an agreement on how to use both farms, and so Don and I sat down and decided that it was probably best just to separate them off. And I took a 5-year payout and some equipment, and he carried on with the main strawberry operation. And that's kind of how that went. But the reason that it wasn't just, we couldn't work that in, the other underlying reason for all of a sudden having to make a decision that we did at that time was that at the off-farm job and the partnership in the farm operation and family, it was hard to balance and be able to do it all. The farming operation was requiring more and more time to hold my share of the partnership, and to be able to do that, it was getting harder and harder on our family. Right. And so I either had to give up the government job, which I was considering doing at the time, or the off-farm job. But then Don was still farming in a century farm with his mom and dad. His dad wasn't ready to retire completely yet. There was no way to work me into the whole operation with any future equity as far as land or anything else with. So right. It was easy to sever it off and go on our own, which we did. Right. So then you guys grew strawberries for how many years here? So then what happened, and there's a good story here, that interest everybody, is that the summer we sold, 1983, we sold out of the partnership, and we decided to take a summer holiday, which we hadn't done with our family. I had three girls at that time. And so we rented a motorhome, went to the East Coast for the month of July, just to get away when the berry season was on. And while we were away, we sat down and had a family meeting, and everybody had input and said, what are we going to do on the home farm? We were thinking of maybe starting to do sheep farming or beef farming or whatever. And all the girls in our family spoke up and said, well, Dad, we really like the strawberries. It was fun growing the strawberries. And so when we came back after that holiday, I says, well, in that case, we got to prepare some land. So I came back, sprayed a field with Roundup, and the next year we started planting berries, which would be 1984. Okay. And that was the start of an operation, Pick Your Own Berries here, that grew to 20-acre berry operation. And we did that on this location for 27 years. Pick Your Berries here. Yeah.
And then you guys have grown this operation, so you've come from growing strawberries and you've moved into more agritainment. You do sleigh rides. Yep. And then you got into pumpkins.
Yep. Now, how that evolved was that when we were in the Pick Your Own Berry business, the customers were picking a little less berries in the 80s than they had been. and it was high interest times and whatnot, and we were expanding and whatnot. So we had to figure out how to make sure we could get all our berries marketed, pick your own. And so what we did, we added pony rides. If you came out for pick your own berries, you could buy ice cream sundaes, cold drinks, pony rides, whatever. So it was kind of like an outing as opposed to just coming to pick food. And that was the start of our ag tourism, ag entertainment part of the operation. So in the late 1980s, we were doing school tours, children's birthday parties, family get-togethers. And then in 1989, with Sue's interest in horses, we bought our first team of draft horses. And then we branched off into sleigh rides in the winter. And then she picked up on doing weddings in the summer. And then someone told us that you should have a maze if you're going to do fall activities. And so we went down to a conference in Madison, Wisconsin to figure out how to set up a corn maze so we could have a corn maze. And the guy says, well, you don't need a 10-acre corn maze. He says, I use 2 acres of my corn maze and I spook it at night and call it a haunted cornfield. And he said, that's more popular than any other maze I've ever had. So we came home, planted 2 acres and started a haunted cornfield. And we ran that for, I think, about 14 years. And then we had to make another decision. Because in the meantime, we had started up our fall pumpkin fest.
Right.
Because we were doing the fall festivals, we were starting to wind down out of the strawberries. The market wasn't growing like it had been, but the fall market was picking up. So in 2006, I said, that's it for strawberries. And now I said, Sue, we're gonna do more ag tourism and we're gonna start growing all our own pumpkins and squash. So then we started planting with 3 acres, and in no time we were up to 16 acres of pumpkins and squash, marketing them at the farm at a big pumpkin festival every fall. And at the same time, we added a lot of activities, and we were still doing the haunted cornfield and doing all these other ag tourism activities. And I said, Sue, my wife Sue, something's got to give. We're running short of time here again. Family's getting grown up. And so we dropped the haunted cornfield and we carried on with the fall stuff. And the fall stuff just grew and grew. It started small, maybe 500 people in the whole fall when we first started in the 90s. And now this will be, well, if you added up 24, and we started in 94, so this will be about, I think it's our 32nd year of fall activities, fall festivals.
Right.
And our customer base has grown from that small number then to, we average now 8,000 to 9,000 customers every fall come through the farm to do the festival and all the activities and food that we have.
Which is what, 8% of the city's population in this area, right? Roughly.
Roughly, yes. Yeah. And we get quite a few customers from the surrounding area, Geraldton, Long Lake, Nippigan, other areas. They'll come in and they'll try to plan their visit to Thunder Bay where they can spend some time and come out to the festival at some time. And on Thanksgiving weekend, people in Thunder Bay, if they have guests, grandparents or whatever from out of town, then they'll bring them out on Thanksgiving weekend for be part of the festival, kind of a tradition. You get a lot of that stuff to spin off of it.
And so, and you worked for the Ministry of Environment.
Yeah.
You did, you retired from there in what year?
I retired from Ministry of Environment in 1999, after 27 years that I put in with them. So if you look back at my work career, over my working career, not counting my time when I did field research, I actually have spent, this will be 50 years this year, farming, and 27 years off farm, working for the province.
Right.
For that period of time, yeah. And I was lucky enough able to carry on with that position long enough so that as I retired, as I got to retirement age, I can get a defined pension out of that job.
Right.
Which is helpful.
And you did say that at one point you toyed with quitting your job with the ministry. Mm-hmm. So you would have farmed full time, but what kept you there?
Kept me there was I had a young family, lots of commitments as far as expenses and everything go, and we weren't big enough, there wasn't enough income to support the lifestyle at the same.
Right.
And the key reason why I was able to do that, we were able to do both, is because Sue, my wife Sue, took a keen interest in the agritourism and being a partner in the farm operation, Gammondale Farm.
Yeah.
If I was trying to do it on my own and Sue had her own career, I don't think you could ever do it. It's just too much. You have to do one or the other. But because she was so interested in mainly dealing with children and young people at the farm, she liked doing the school tours because she has university education as well. So that means that with that and that interest and following through with filling in when I couldn't be here, then I was able to keep that job long enough to be able to do that.
Well, and she's such a people person, so she's a great face for the tourism side of it.
Yeah. It worked great, and she's excellent marketing. Her marketing skills are great. So with all that together, then it worked.
Right.
And it grew because of it. Every time we tried to say something, it seemed to grow.
Yeah.
To the point where you'd have to rein it in or cancel it out.
Well, so then that leads me into another question, and that's how did you balance your work life with family and with your farm?
Yeah, it was hard to keep that nice balance, to keep, especially the family side. When you're focused to work, you have a work ethic, you can overdo that part. The part that helped was that the first crop I got into, where we were doing significant farming, was strawberries, and that was the summertime. And when the straw went on the berries in late October, you were done. You had the whole winter to kind of regroup as a family and do family stuff, skiing, all that kind of stuff that we did in the winter activities.
Yeah.
And then we always went to meetings in the winter for educational purposes on how to grow berries and crops better. And when we did that, then I would take Sue or take the family with us, and that was our winter holiday. So that kind of helped balance that out.
Yeah.
And because you had that break, you could do that. And but otherwise, if it was year-round livestock and stuff, of course we had some animals in the barn, but there's nothing compared to the demand of if you were trying to make your money in sheep or beef or whatever.
Right.
It would be a year-round thing. Whereas this way, you get the break, you recharge, regroup, and away you go at it again.
Yeah.
And then, as we got older and the agritourism became year-round, our girls were growing up, and they were getting more on their own, going off to university and leaving home. So you had the time. The family was Sue and I, and the girls were getting more on their own. So then you could keep it balanced that way. But it was tough. That was the key reason why we had to do something in the '83, because the girls were still pretty young then.
Yeah.
I wasn't helping at home very much in the summertime.
Right. So now I know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's on my list. But do you have a farm succession plan?
They're not within the family. Sue, we've had meetings with the girls, and one of our daughters is a graduate of the University of Guelph in Ag-Ec, and our son-in-law, he's a graduate from University of Guelph in agriculture as well. And our oldest daughter up here is Laurier grad. Margot's in Southern Ontario. She was at Guelph for a while. We've talked to all of them if they were interested in it. Sandra and Phil were a bit interested. We sat down and looked at the books, and they said, well, Dad, we've got good jobs, benefits. We don't have to work weekends. And the amount of money you're going to make and the commitment you have to make, no, we're not interested. So the succession plan, per se, is that Sue and I are going to live at the farm as long as we can. We're going to go less and less on the business side. And at some point, we'll be selling the farm to someone else that may or may not be interested in the same kind of ag tourism, but may be interested in some part of the operation that they'll carry on. But we're gonna carry on as long as we can here and enjoy the place.
Right.
But we're quite sorry.
So, and this is a question that probably Mrs. Gammond would have the answer to, but I'm going to ask it: is what have you found to be your best form of marketing when even when you were in strawberries versus what you're doing now? What would you say your best marketing tool has been?
Well,
or is it just Sue?
Sue, of course, is excellent at marketing. I'll tell you one story, a little story that sort of convinced us to go the direction we have with more emphasis on ag entertainment and ag tourism. And that's because at one point we were growing pick your own strawberries, and we were just nicely getting into fall festivals. And I had a customer that summer that kind of chewed me out about the cost of our berries. And we were selling a heaping 4-liter pail of berries at that time for $12 each. And she'd come and pick 2 pails, beautiful pails of berries, and on the way out said, "Mr. Gammond, you're gonna have to do something." "What do you mean? What do we have to do?" "You have to lower your price. These are way too expensive, and some people can't afford this, and you just have to be able to sell them for less." And I just kind of bit my tongue and said, "Well, thank you, ma'am, for your comment, but there's no way we can if we're gonna stay in the berry business, because we're gonna go back up that. We're just charging what we need to get some kind of return." That same fall, I remembered the gal. That same fall, that gal came to our pumpkin fest, and we were selling pumpkins and decorations and straw bales and bundles of corn stalks and all kinds of stuff. And we were charging admission, and at that time admission was around $8 or $10 a person coming in. And we had all our activities, our little barrel trains and little blue barn and all this stuff, and we were selling hot dogs and stuff in the cabin. And I saw her going out, and she came up to me, and she had 2 young children with her, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Gammond, I recognize you." I said, "Yeah, I kind of recognize you a bit." I said, "Oh, thank you so much for doing this. It's been such a great time. I've been here with my grandkids. I've never had so much fun, and just thank you again for doing all." And she was dragging a cart with produce. And so I went up to our staff in the hayloft at the time, which we were selling produce out of, and it was Pat there at the time. I said, "Pat, see that gal there?" I said, "How much did she spend on all that stuff?" And she says, "I can tell you exactly, Gerry." She wrote a check, and she went and looked, and she said $63 she spent on that. And I said, "Oh my goodness." And there's not anything there she's going to eat. She's going to decorate with gourds and pumpkins, and she's got corn stalks and all that stuff. Not going to eat anything, and she's happy. But yet, I said, she's the one that chewed me out last summer because of the price of my berries. And that pretty much convinced me that there's more profit and money to be made in ag tourism than in growing crops and produce and food.
Right.
Even if you're selling it right at the farm, retailing and pick your own. At least I felt that we could make more money profit than we did. And so then our emphasis shifted way more into our fall and our haunted cornfield and all the activities, weddings, all the stuff we were doing at the farm. And the profitability of the farm just went up and keeps going up.
Right.
Because of it. And it is a bit weather related still. You can't do sleigh rides when it's minus 30, and you sometimes have years where it's had trouble getting ripe pumpkins when you have cool summers here, but we were able to work around a lot of that with our plastic mulch systems and stuff we used, and we were able to keep it going. But I was kind of leaning in that direction. We felt that was the case anyhow, but as someone said at a meeting once, they've taken on a new cash crop at their farm, and it's called admission.
Yeah.
And that was our new cash crop.
Yeah.
Charging admission to attend our farm, and that's a nice chunk of profit.
Yeah.
Right there.
And even with your Fall Fest stuff, you've changed some of that now because you guys have slowed down, and so now you're not growing your own pumpkins either. You bring them in now, right?
Exactly. That's a result of COVID. When we went through COVID, we were still growing all our own pumpkins, and then that year, the health unit were kind of reading the riot act to us as far as being able to be open that fall because they were shutting everything down. And so we worked with the health unit that summer, and we put up queue lines, and we had distance signs so we could work through all that. And then the other thing we did was that we had to get a computer system so we could sell admission tickets ahead, so we'd have a contact list. in case somebody got sick at the farm. But the other thing that went on that year is that there was no guarantee we were gonna be open, so there was no point in growing 15 acres of pumpkins, 60, what am I gonna do with 60 tons of pumpkins? And if I can't be open to sell them, because our marketing plan was to sell them at the farm
Right.
during our festival. And so I didn't plant any pumpkins. Well, then in August, the paladin said, yeah, you can be open this fall now that you've got your computer system and da-da-da-da-da. So I said to Sue, well, I guess we gotta find pumpkins. So we ordered it well, we actually ordered 2 semis of pumpkins. And we made all our displays
Yeah.
and ran with our festival. Kept track of all our costs, and when we added it all up and all the costs, we could bring pumpkins in cheaper and make our displays cheaper if we bought from pumpkin growers in southern Ontario or out west than growing our own.
Right.
So for the last 3 years, we run a pumpkin festival, and we bring all the pumpkins in from growers that grew a lot more pumpkins than I ever did. In fact, the one grower has over 300 acres that
Oh wow.
supplies. That's what I sent me, load of pumpkins.
That's a lot of pumpkins.
Yeah, ton of pumpkins, tons, literally tons. Yeah, so it saves us a lot of work, a lot of costs. Last summer, I went on a fishing trip for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
You know, flying fishing trip. Yes,
Oh, that's good.
I didn't have to grow a crop. But then, we had hay crops and pasture crops that we still maintain here for the horses and whatnot. But
Yeah.
otherwise, no, we're not growing a horticultural crop that
Right.
requires a lot more.
And when you're in
Effort.
that world, it takes so much manual labor. It doesn't matter what you do.
No matter what you do, yeah.
Yeah. You can't harvest pumpkins with a shop vac and a generator.
No, you gotta hire crews of kids, and you know, and up here to be guaranteed right pumpkins, we found you had to grow them on a plastic mulch, and then we actually got into hand pollinating because we could get 2-week jump on the season.
Right.
We hand pollinated instead of waiting for all the natural pollination.
And you pre-germinated your seeds.
And we
too.
pre-germinated seed to get an early start. So we did all that so we could be guaranteed ripe orange pumpkins every fall.
Right.
That's a lot of effort, to say the least.
Yeah.
And you always plant more than you need,
Yeah.
so you don't want to be short, because in case it's a cool year and you don't have many pumpkins and stuff. So then you're disking pumpkins back in, and then you think you're done in the fall, but in the spring you got to take all that old plastic up, put new plastic down, start over, and we hand plant. Yeah. It was better to order the semi loads and carry on with your festival.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. I
So-
think we had 5 inquiries.
So circling back
Last
to
year.
your main commodities, now your main commodity is admission.
It's admission. We charge everybody that comes to the farm, whether they're coming for a sleigh ride, a wedding, a birthday party, or a festival.
Right.
Everybody pays to visit the farm.
I'm glad you don't charge the farrier.
No, he charges us.
Yeah. Then you guys have won some awards.
Yeah,
You
we
had
did.
some recognition.
Yeah, I don't know the exact year, but it was in the late 80s, early 90s. We got the Agri Innovation Award, and it was to do a lot with what we were doing with ag education, the
Okay,
Ministry
yeah.
of Ag and Food.
Yeah.
And we were nominated, I don't know who nominated us, but we were nominated for the award at that time. It was a nice little bonus, a $5,000 award given to you, and the plaques are still up in our chalet that we built and everything. And
Yeah.
nice to get a bit of recognition that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The what's the other thing I was going to ask you about? So then, leading on to that, what would you say were some of the innovations that you came up with, maybe that other guys weren't doing that you were doing? Because you guys have done some pretty interesting things here over the years.
Well, it started with the strawberries way back when everybody said you can't grow strawberries in this area. One was the winter, of course, and we had to do lots of experimenting with mulches and rates of application to get that right. But the main thing that was holding guys back, they said, well, every June you're going to lose your crop because of frost. We get frost in June in this area, right when the berries are blooming.
Right.
And so at that time, we had heard that they were frost protecting. They developed this frost protecting technique with irrigation. If you turned it on at night, when the temperature got to the critical point, and sprinkled water on at a good proper rate, made a bit of ice, you would prevent the flowers from freezing, because the strawberry blossom can take about minus half a degree Fahrenheit and not die, but it can't take 1 or 2 degrees freezing, it goes black and you get no fruit. So we looked into that, and sure enough, there was a grower down in Iron Bridge, Wisconsin, that had perfected the technique. Arnold Johnson, never forget the guy. And he had it down pat, and so we actually went and spent time with him, and I met him at a meeting and spent time with him at a berry grower meeting down the States. So we had it down pat. So that bit of innovation to frost protect strawberries was brand new to Northern Ontario, and so that helped us with the crop. The other thing was the growing of the pumpkins, to figure out how to do that properly. That took lots of playing around with the pre-germination, getting the right kind of plastic to be able to get some extra heat into the ground but prevent weed growth, all that kind of stuff. So, and that was working with plastic suppliers in Southern Ontario that supply farms. So yeah, we did some of those things you had to deal with. If you're gonna get a crop up here in a short season, you gotta be scrambling. Yeah. Try new stuff.
So now you get a lot of public in and out of here. You've had a lot of kids working for you over the years.
Yep.
So one of my other ones that I sort of wanted to get touched on in some of these podcasts is farm safety.
Yep.
So you've probably had some incidences, but what do you guys do to sort of prevent farm accidents?
We have a lot of young kids that work here, and the deal is that when they come, they have to participate in our staff training sessions every fall, and the training sessions cover farm safety, and Sue also uses it as an opportunity to cover marketing, direct marketing, and customer service stuff with young kids.
Yep.
But the main thing is we have to match the kid with the job. So, if we have for the horse rides and the animals in the barn, we match kids with that are comfortable around the barn, and then we go over and over all the safety stuff. They have to be careful how to watch them. Same every little activity we do. Say the pumpkin train, we train a couple of kids to drive that pumpkin train. They have to come. They have to know how to drive the lawnmower that pulls it at the start, and then we have to go through all the rules. How you have to do it to make sure that nobody gets their toe run over or whatever.
Yeah.
And we do that through all of the activities that are here. It's extra time. We pay the kids to come while they're being trained, and then once they are there, if they're trained on 2 or 3 of the jobs here, then they can do them. If they haven't, they're not allowed to do it. Another good example would be the corn cannon. Kids have to know all the safety parts of running that little site, that little area, and we go over and over and over that, and then that's it. We haven't had any issues with any staff. No staff ever got hurt here while they were working here. We've had a couple of customers have injuries. One was on a sleigh ride, one was in the barn once they tripped or whatever.
Yeah.
So we've had liability issues with that, but we have good insurance coverage to cover that up.
Yeah. Now I'm going to circle on that one though, because there's a farm safety thing that's been drilled into my head, and it was because of an incident that happened here with your dad, that I never start a tractor unless I'm sitting on the seat.
Yep. Yeah, my dad was old school, and he grew up with old little tractors. I remember the first little tractor we had on the farm was an Alice CA, a little 2-furrow plow tractor. And then so in those days, as all farmers do, they're trying to cut corners. They would start them from the side instead of getting up to the seat, just to warm them up and get them going. And of course, nowadays you don't fire them up and warm them up, or you can't even start them without. But anyhow, he did, and we had an old International that the gear shift was pretty loose and worn. It was hard to tell when it was in neutral, but he pulled his old trick of starting it from the side, and then ran over him and bruised his leg real bad.
Yeah. But it went up the back of the machine shed wall and then went over him again, did it not?
It was in the machine shed, which is open on the front and sheeted in on the back. Of course, it went straight forward over some baskets at the front. The front end went up and then went right up into the tin, went over his leg going forward, and then it got a certain height, and then it stalled, and rolled backwards and rolled back over his leg again. Yeah. So, of course, we never went through safety rules with him because we just, he was older, you figured he would know. Anyhow.
Sometimes it's hard to teach a guy like that to change his ways.
He was in his 60s at that time, and actually he came back the odd time after to help a bit, but he never drove a tractor again.
Oh, no.
He was done, yeah.
So then the other one that you guys have always been big advocates of teaching the next generation, both you and Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Your girls were involved in 4-H, young farmers. Did you come out of a 4-H program yourself as a kid?
Yep, sure did. At that time, when I was a kid, you could join 4-H if you were 12, and I did. And I was in the potato club and the dairy calf club. I competed against Chapel's farm, which was the big farm in the area at that time. Came second to Cynthia Chapel at that time. And then at that time, and then they had a gardening club. And then at that time, as you kind of aged out of 4-H a little bit, they also had a very active junior farmer program at that time. So as you got your driver's license and whatnot, you got a little older, they were a junior farmer, where they did community projects and they had meetings, and there was lots of activities, dances and stuff, and those were things that were junior farmer focused and whatnot. And then as an adult, when we came back, we got our kids involved in 4-H in a big way. So I thought it was a good program when they were young. That was in the 70s and 80s. 80s, I guess, mostly. Kids were born in the 70s, so it would have been in the 80s that they were into that, up until the early 90s. And they were in lots of clubs. And at that time, I was a leader of the 4-H plowing club.
Okay.
Elkie Jensen and I started.
Right.
And we had that going. But otherwise, we assisted in the leadership of the dairy calf clubs.
Yeah.
And we ended up with Sue's took it on. My wife Sue took it on, where we took 3 years. We took a team of calves to the Hayes Classic Dairy Show at the Royal Winter Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I remember my brothers were some of those kids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they did go. Yeah. So that was a big event. So it was a great program. We supported it and got the kids involved. And I don't know all the clubs the kids were in. There were other clubs they were in too, but
By the time
I know better what all the
time I hit 4-H age in this area, things were winding down. So I did a few dairy calf clubs, some beef club, and then I did several rounds of rabbit club. It was quite fun.
Yeah. See, what happened was then the Ministry of Ag and Food backed off on the funding of a lot of those programs, and they were turning it over to communities and volunteers to keep it going. And when they backed out on a lot of the funding of it, even just for the publications and the registrations and the booklets and stuff, it was hard to keep it going.
Yeah.
And there was an extension person in every ag office across Ontario that part of their job spec was to assist with the 4-H program, 4-H coordinator. And so that really helped keep that whole program going for a long time. So when they pulled out of that, this thing started to go down and pretty well faded. Yeah.
Well, and that's what it's starting to build back here now, but it's still taking its time. And when I went after my leadership stuff a few years ago, one of my friends that was on the 4-H board locally worked for the school board also, and she said it's easier to get a job working for the school board than it is to become a 4-H leader. And she's right.
All those where your volunteers working on that, you got all these security checks and everything else you got to go through
So what's next?
What's next for Sue and I?
Yep.
Well, next is to go slower with all the farm stuff. We're going to start winding the farm down as far as numbers of activities. Sue is still doing school tours this year. She's booking some tours into June. So we'll be doing that. We got birthday parties. She's got a wedding booked in 2 weddings booked, I think, for the summer. But not doing 6 or 8 like we had when we were really busy.
Yeah.
School tours, it's just a light number. We used to book morning and afternoon solid for most of for 3 weeks. Now we might do 12 or 15 total, so
Right.
it's less, mainly just to keep a bit busy. As we get older, we feel we want to keep a little bit busy. I'm pretty much winding down. I'm not growing crops anymore, and I'm pretty much gonna phase right into retirement. Sue wants to keep active in some of the things she's been doing for a while. We're probably gonna do another fall festival this fall. We'll decide that in July or August, and when we have to order the pumpkins, if we're gonna go ahead. The sleigh rides and all that stuff, it depends on our health.
Right.
Sue's having trouble with her wrists and stuff now, and we both had body parts, knees, and she's had ankles replaced and stuff. So we're gonna go slower, and the goal would be to continue living here as long as we can.
Yeah.
Enjoy it while working at a lower pace.
Yeah.
I.e. mowing the grass, gardening, and maybe keeping a few animals in the barn. And I think going forward, instead of running it as a business, I think you will find that in the next year or two, we're gonna offer the farm as a venue for nonprofit groups.
Right.
I.e. Camp Quality or George Jeffrey Center, if they wanna have a place to come, and because we still have the props, the barrel train, pumpkin train, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that we can provide a nice place for groups to come, but we would like to do it, so that groups that maybe don't have funding to be able to bring a group on their own, it would come for free, and we'll provide the venue and they can enjoy it.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe do enough stuff where we charge a bit so we can cover the liability insurance and stuff.
Okay.
But otherwise, I see that. I can see we've got a few health issues within our family, wanting to free up time so we can help with them with that.
Yeah.
Get through that kind of stuff. We have grandchildren that our granddaughter and partner have bought a small piece of property, and they approached us the other day. There's a garden site on the property, and they've never had a garden.
Okay.
So we're going to show our grandchildren how to grow a garden.
Excellent.
That'll be one of the projects this summer.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff. Yeah. I also last winter for something I like to curl in winter. And Sue she has a social group that she exercises with. I think as you get older, at our age, you want to free up a bit more time to socialize and take the pressure off commitments of the business part. You want to free yourself away from that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be worrying about a group coming in bad weather and all the rest of that when you don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
And we're kind of at the stage financially we can do that.
Yeah.
So I think that we'll do.
So my next section is they're kind of quick answer questions. My friend Brian Mullins has a great name for it in his Farrier podcast. He calls it the stratum tectorum, which is the outer layer of the hoof wall, because he says this is the surface stuff questions. So I need to come up with a better name for it at some point, but we're just going to call it the quick answer questions today. But so the first one is tractor brand.
Tractor brand, Massey Ferguson.
Yeah. How about equipment brand? Separate from tractor.
Equipment, separate from tractor, I've had a whole range of stuff from irrigation to mulchers and you name it. It's all over the place.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite book?
Favorite book? Your Erroneous Zones by Dr. Dyer.
Okay, I don't think I've seen
It's
that
a
one.
philosophical book on how people respond to stress.
Okay.
It's kind of like a stress relief.
Interesting.
It's an old book. I read it a long time ago.
Inspirational quote.
Quote.
Or do you have one?
Don't have one. I used to look at the decorum, whatever, not about changing the things you can and forget about stuff you can't.
Yeah.
Don't stew it,
Farm organization. You're an OFA member, right?
Yeah, I'm an OFA, kind of like just as a token member there, but our best organization would be Ontario Farm Fresh.
Okay.
We've been members of them for years. We're members of the North American Direct Farm Marketers. We still are there. Great organization. They have lots of great ideas on what you're doing when you're in the agritourism stuff. when we were in berries, I really liked the North American Strawberry Growers Association.
Okay.
We used to go to their annual meetings. They
Yeah.
were a great crew to get together with. Yep.
Favorite drink?
Favorite drink, beer,
Okay.
any kind.
Cold ones.
Cold, cellar temp, doesn't matter.
And then truck brand.
Took that Ford. I'm a Ford F-150 guy. Yep.
Yep. I still remember the old blue and white Ford.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've had Ford since the 70s.
Well, thank you, Mr. G, for sitting down with me.
You're welcome.
And yeah, if anybody's interested in knowing more about Gammondale Farm and what Gerry and Sue have managed to build here, you can check them out. Your website's www.gammondalefarm.com.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And they're also on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for listening, guys. Thank you for listening to Stuff You Learn with Luke. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you want to keep up to date for the next episode, follow me on Instagram at Stuff You Learn with Luke or on TikTok at Stuff You Learn with Luke. Until next time, this is Stuff You Learn with Luke.